name is Mary Cannon. You may recognize me as Pastor Neil's wife, or at least maybe you'd recognize the back of my head as one of the moms typically seated up near the playground in church trying to keep our two little boys from being too much of a distraction on Sunday mornings. So to share a bit about my background, I grew up in northern Minnesota in Duluth and actually attended the same ELCA church growing up that Linnea Pearson did because it's such a small Lutheran world sometimes. My family attended regularly and I was involved in a variety of ways from a pretty early age. I sang in a kids choir for several years in elementary school. I was part of a team of 9th and 10th graders that taught Sunday school to younger kids. And then I was on a leadership team my last 2 years of high school that helped to lead the big weekly youth group for 7th to 12th graders that our church hosted on Monday nights. I went to church camp during confirmation years, and I ultimately ended up working for our church's youth program for a few summers during my college years. I attended St. Olaf College, one of the ELCA's affiliated colleges. So faith and church, and specifically Lutheranism, has been a significant part of my life for as long as I can remember, though I still never would have predicted that I'd marry a pastor. After college, I moved to the cities, and this acquaintance named Neil recruited me to teach confirmation at his church in Roseville. We eventually started dating, and we got married, and I've been following him to various congregations ever since as his number one groupie. As I was thinking about why I wanted to list out and enumerate all of those things, it's not to put on some kind of show about how I have, almost 36 years of Lutheran pedigree that prove my worth or connection to this body of believers. I think the common thread for me is that my faith and my connection to God, and many of the times when I have felt most clearly connected and grounded in that faith, have all occurred in the context of community. For someone who leans towards the introvert side of the scales, I have so often seen God's presence in my life through the people that I'm surrounded by and supported by on a daily basis. I have found important mentors, deep and lasting friendships, my spouse, and all kinds of seemingly small moments of joy because I said yes to an active role in this church community. Maybe that's why when Neil asked me if I wanted to participate in these faith stories, I was pretty hesitant. I wasn't sure how much I had to say that would be interesting or relevant for others to hear. I'm not sure about all of you, but I feel like my brain and my heart and my day-to-day life these past 4 or 5 months since COVID-19 so drastically altered our reality, so many of those months have been spent largely in various levels of functionality with a lot of time spent in survival mode. And that's on top of parenting a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old who don't leave me a lot of time or energy for personal reflection even on my best days. Don't get me wrong, I recognize my extreme privilege to be experiencing this historical moment from the safety of a home rooted in love, where our employment and food security weren't in danger, and I was already focusing on our kids full time, so we weren't trying to juggle parenting and working from home as so many have had to do. Yet, I have been anxious and tired and irritable, though Neil will be in trouble if he too quickly agrees to that. I've been missing our communal gatherings on Sunday mornings, and I've been sad to see my kids missing out on the types of relationships that have meant so much to me. But since I have so often felt or seen God in community with other believers, I wanted to show up here to say that if that kind of survival mode has been part of your story in 2020, you aren't alone. I have been finding new ways to experience God in community while staying so close to our house. I actually get to sit next to Neil on Sunday mornings, worshiping together as a family, which is not something we've gotten to do that often. And I'm more likely to hear a full sermon since he's there to co-parent our kids during worship. I have a new appreciation for the power of a friendly note in your mailbox, as my boys and I have sent a lot of cards and notes and drawings to family and friends to let them know that we're thinking of them. And it's been really fun to see how Noah in particular, but Miles too, have really embraced that idea. It was surprising to me how much I appreciated feeling a sense of community with our synod's congregations, knowing that so many were experiencing the same joint worship over the holiday weekends where the synod provided the materials. I have missed our community of people that are so often God's love and light in our lives, but we have been spending a lot of time in God's creation, communing with God and my boys by exploring new parks and paths and waterways that have been a much needed source of deep breaths and rejuvenation when needed, and time for my boys to fight a lot less when we're outside and that kind of thing. So that's been a common way for us to take a deep breath and reset when we needed to over these past few months. And the thread of community is also deeply there in how the murder of George Floyd has impacted my faith. I think I am at the beginning of starting to understand the variety of ways that I have failed to show up in community with my BIPOC siblings in Christ, and where my opportunities will come for change moving forward. I remember sitting next to Noah in our living room a few weeks ago, singing All Are Welcome towards the end of church. And this verse that I'm about to sort of share with you came up, and every word of it resonated as a reckoning for me, making me ask myself what I have done to make these words true. And the verse is, "Let us build a house where all are named, their songs and visions heard, and loved and treasured, taught and claimed as words within the word." So let us build a house where all are named. They all are named as a child of God, not anonymous statistics to be set aside. Let us build a house where stories that look different than mine are still deeply heard and loved and treasured, even if it lays bare some of our own faults or complicities. And finally, let us build a house where those stories are taught, are shared with all, and are claimed as part of God's story of reconciliation and compassion as we move towards a more just community for all of God's children. So I guess that's where my faith story is at right now. Amidst days with anxiety and exhaustion, I'm also trying to find new ways to appreciate and embody God in community while largely waving at people from afar. I hope you are well and able to enjoy the day ahead, my Woodlake community.
Crooked arm to fire the flares, to send out the alarm.